In a 2023 study, 73% of people admitted to joining in on public shaming, even when they weren't sure the person did anything wrong. We think evil hides in dark corners. But Carl Jung once warned us, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, because the scariest kind of evil wears a mask of virtue. If you've seen our first video on Jung's shadow complex, you already know the shadow isn't just a dark side, it's a powerful part of who we are. And in the second video, we explored how to face it without losing yourself. Now we're asking, what happens when a society refuses to face its shadow at all? Every day, someone gets cancelled, sometimes deserved, sometimes not so much. And if you've ever felt uneasy about how fast the crowd decides who deserves punishment, you're not alone. Jung warned about this kind of mass behavior, what many today refer to as the collective shadow. It's what happens when a society avoids facing its own darkness and starts projecting it onto others. I've been diving deep into Jung's work, his writing, lectures, case studies, and pairing them with history, modern psychology, and honestly, way too many internet rabbit holes. What I found is disturbing, but also incredibly important. Let's talk about why societies go mad. We live in an age of awareness. We have terms like gaslighting, trauma, narcissism, emotional labor, and that's great. But there's a flip side, a darker one. Because sometimes awareness turns into accusation, and accusation turns into punishment. Fast. Social media moves at the speed of outrage. Someone says the wrong thing or didn't say something fast enough, and suddenly, they're done. Carl Jung once commented, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, but instead of looking inward, we often lash outward. And the more we deny our own aggression, envy, shame, or fear, the more we look for it in others. This isn't new. It's happened before. Let me take you back." Salem, 1692. A few teenage girls started convulsing. They blamed witches. Within months, 200 people were accused. 20 were executed. These weren't evil people. These were neighbors, midwives, teachers. How did that happen? Fear, yes, but also collective projection. The community couldn't admit its own guilt, tensions, and repressed desires, so it found scapegoats. Their fears were real, but instead of processing them, they personified them. A shadow isn't dangerous until it's disowned, then it becomes monstrous. This moment in history shows us how emotional contagion can replace logic. One cry of fear spreads faster than a whisper of doubt. People chose safety over fairness, and in doing so, they unleashed a shadow that devoured their own community. Germany, 1930s. Jung lived through this one. A society reeling from loss, shame, and economic ruin became obsessed with purity. Carl Jung once stated, "The bigger the crowd, the more negligible the individual becomes." The collective shadow was projected onto Jews, Roma people, and anyone different. And when a whole society agrees on who the villain is, morality becomes weaponized. Propaganda wasn't just political, it was psychological. It invited people to offload their pain onto another. The more the people felt powerless, the more they clung to a clean narrative. We are good, they are evil. This wasn't just a political shift, it was a collapse of the collective psyche. And Jung was one of the few major voices warning that a society that refuses to deal with its unconscious will become consumed by it. It is not we who have to assimilate the shadow, but the shadow that must assimilate us. Carl Jung. This is the horror of the collective shadow. It doesn't just turn societies into mobs, it turns morality into a tool for destruction. The most dangerous things in the world are immense accumulations of human beings who are manipulated by only a few heads. Carl Jung. Now, we have Twitter threads instead of torches, but the psychological machinery is the same. A group shares outrage, the outrage gives a dopamine hit, that hit bonds the group needs a villain. Carl Jung once reflected, "The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of the personality as present and real. But we rarely do that. Instead, we repost, retweet, retarget. Online platforms have turned outrage into performance. The faster you condemn someone, the more likes you get. The more viral your takedown, the more morally elevated you appear. It rewards snap judgments and punishes nuance. And when thousands of people agree with your anger, it starts to feel like truth, not just emotion. The collective shadow thrives in these spaces because it hides behind shared values. It wears the costume of justice, but speaks in the language of projection. It doesn't matter if the person deserves it or not. What matters is that we're together, united by indignation, and that unity can feel righteous until you realize the rules change daily. People who were heroes one week become villains the next. All it takes is one screenshot, one poorly worded comment, one moment taken out of context. We all want justice. That's human. But when the desire for justice becomes a craving for punishment, we've left the realm of repair and entered the realm of the shadow. And let's not forget how algorithms feed the shadow. Content that triggers moral outrage spreads faster. The system rewards unprocessed emotion. That's not a bug. It's the business model. No apology is ever enough. No redemption arc is allowed. The mob doesn't forgive, because forgiveness would require seeing your own shadow in someone else. Pause for a second. Who's the last person you judged harshly online? Tomorrow, it could be you. Want to know something both fascinating and kind of terrifying? Your brain loves outrage. It treats it like a reward. Seriously, scientists have scanned people's brains during moral indignation, and guess what lights up? The ventral striatum, aka your pleasure center. Same spot that gets excited by sugar, flirting, or winning Mario Kart. We're literally wired to enjoy getting mad, especially when it feels morally righteous. And the internet, it knows that. It's built for that. Algorithms don't care if you're right. They care if you're emotional. Here's what else is going on in your skull when the collective shadow kicks in. Your prefrontal cortex, the calm, rational decision maker, takes a back seat. Your amygdala, the ancient threat detector, steps in and yells, "Us versus them, protect the tribe." Groupthink floods the system. Your individual judgment, ghosted. This isn't about villainizing the brain. It's about understanding how it tricks us, especially when we're surrounded by others who agree. Even modern psychology backs Jung's core idea. We don't always know why we react the way we do, because some part of us is doing the reacting for us. Or, as Jung once said, the unconscious behaves as if it were a person with opinions, views, intentions, and tendencies which are often contrary to our own, which is spooky, and also makes a lot of sense. Carl Jung didn't just identify the shadow. He believed our survival, both individually and collectively, depended on how we related to it. He called the path forward individuation, a lifelong process of becoming whole. And that includes integrating the shadow, not eliminating it, not shaming it, but owning it. Because when we suppress the shadow, it doesn't go away. It waits, it festers, and eventually it finds its way out through projection, cruelty, or collective madness. So what does it actually mean to integrate your shadow? It starts with noticing. The twinge of envy when someone else is praised. The flicker of glee when someone you dislike messes up. The self-righteousness that shows up when you feel better than someone else. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Shadow work is the act of making the unconscious conscious. Of saying, that part of me I hate, that's still me. And in doing that, you take your power back. How to practice shadow integration. This isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming honest. Start with reflection, journaling about your emotional triggers, asking, what trait in others most annoys me, and where do I see it in myself? Noticing the narratives you create about who's good and who's bad. Use projection as a mirror. When you find yourself judging someone intensely, pause. Ask, what does this judgment reveal about what I fear in myself? Therapy can be a safe place to explore this. So can dream work, meditation, or even reading fiction that challenges your worldview. Jung believed symbols in dreams were messengers of the unconscious. Shadow figures, monsters, villains, chaotic forces often show up there, begging to be understood rather than destroyed. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light. Jung once wrote, but by making the darkness conscious. The more we know ourselves, the less likely we are to need enemies to define us. Quick pause. Let's stay connected. If this video is resonating with you, take a second to like and subscribe. Not just because it helps the channel, but because we're building a space where deep thinking and self-reflection are actually encouraged. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next chapter in this journey. Back to the video. Why does any of this matter now, more than ever? When we do our inner work, we become less reactive, more compassionate, and harder to manipulate. We stop blindly joining the mob because we're not trying to outrun our own shame. We stop needing to cancel others because we've forgiven parts of ourselves. The collective shadow shrinks when enough people stop feeding it. And feeding it looks like shaming without empathy, judging without understanding, condemning without reflection. If you've ever asked, what can I do to make the world less chaotic? This is it. This is the work. It's not flashy, it's not trending, but it's transformational. Jung didn't offer easy solutions. He offered honest ones. And in a world that sometimes feels like it's losing its mind, honesty might just be our salvation. The collective shadow explains how groups go mad. But what happens when our pursuit of enlightenment, of being better, higher, more spiritually evolved, becomes a hiding place for our shadow? That's what we're exploring next in Shadow of the Self, the dark side of spiritual growth. Until then, take care. See you in the next video.